Don't look back. They say New York is the city that never sleeps. But maybe it's not just the bright lights keeping it awake. Maybe it's the things watching you in the dark. Tonight, we will open doors that were never meant to be opened. Forget the glitter of Times Square or the bustle of the subway. We're taking you into the shadows of New York, to cold basements that breathe, tunnels that whisper, and bedrooms where silence turns into a scream. These aren't just stories. They're real events, told by real people. 3 moments when the veil between our world and something darker was torn. If you're watching this alone, you might want to leave a light on. Story 1. Photograph of little Patrick Alford, left, and an age progression projection of how he might look years later, right, published by authorities to help locate him. On the cold night of January 22nd, 2010, the flashing lights of police patrols illuminated the brick buildings of the Spring Creek Towers complex in East New York, Brooklyn. A somber rumor spread among worried neighbors peeking out. A 7-year-old boy had disappeared. His name was Patrick Alford, and he vanished like a ghost in that dark tower of apartments. I was a new detective in the missing persons unit when the call came in. Upon reaching the 11th floor of the tower, I saw a woman sobbing uncontrollably. She was Patrick's foster mother. She told us that night she had gone down the hallway with him and his little sister, so Patrick could take out the trash, as was his daily chore. As he carried the bag toward the trash chute, she received a call on her cell phone that distracted her for just an instant. Just an instant. When she looked up again, Patrick was no longer there. At first, she thought that perhaps the restless, rebellious boy had run off to the stairwell. Only a few seconds had passed, but Patrick seemed to have vanished into thin air. She frantically searched the hallways, shouting his name, Patrick, over and over among the echoes off the concrete. Nothing. The 7-year-old boy had disappeared without a trace. The disappearance triggered one of the most extensive searches New York has ever seen. Dozens of police officers and volunteers combed every corner of those monolithic buildings and their surroundings. Door by door, we questioned residents. 14,000 interviews, 9,000 apartments searched in hopes of finding any clue. I remember knocking on doors at 3 a.m., holding Patrick's school photo in my hand, asking you, "Have you seen this boy?" Some neighbors helped us search boiler rooms, rooftops, fire escapes, trash containers, gulps, any place where a scared child could hide, or, God forbid, where someone could have hidden him. Helicopters flew over the area with powerful searchlights. Scent tracking dogs sniffed every corner of the complex. Posters with Patrick's smiling face. A young Afro-Latino boy with big eyes, covered lampposts, train stations, and shop windows all over the city. The entire New York community rallied around one goal: finding Patrick Alford alive. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, with no sign of the boy. Every lead ended in a dead end. Some witnesses claimed they saw a small boy running toward the building's exit that night, and there were even reports that he'd gotten into a dark van. But nothing was confirmed. No security camera captured him escaping. It was as if the darkness of that building had swallowed him whole. Theories abounded. Some said Patrick, desperate to return to his biological mother, who didn't speak English while Patrick spoke barely any Spanish, making his adjustment difficult, might have tried to reach Staten Island where his family lived. Others feared that a stranger had taken him that very night. Each night that passed without news tightened the knot in everyone's stomach. The city that never sleeps went to bed filled with fear and uncertainty, imagining the horrors that could have befallen that little boy. I remember walking through the empty playground under the dim glow of streetlights, with February's freezing air biting my face, wondering how something like this could happen. How could a child disappear in the middle of a crowded building with cameras? That question haunted me. In my 15 years on the force, I had never seen a case like this. We checked the same areas over and over, hoping we had missed some clue. A piece of his red shirt, one of his little black shoes, anything. But there was nothing. It was like chasing a ghost. Patrick's case shook the city deeply, reminding many of the famous case of Eton Patz decades earlier, another New York boy who disappeared without a trace. Patrick's face became front-page news. His sweet, smiling photo appeared on TV news broadcasts, always accompanied by the same plea: if you have any information, please contact the police. But the nights kept passing, one after another, without answers. Today, years have passed, and Patrick Alford is still missing. His case remains open, gathering dust but never forgotten. Sometimes I still mentally review the facts, wondering what we might have missed. At the station, we still have his poster hanging up, now next to a computer-generated image of what he might look like as a teenager and young adult. Patrick would be 22 years old today. Is he still alive somewhere, now a man who perhaps doesn't even remember who he is? No one knows. The only certain thing is that one winter night in a Brooklyn building, a small boy disappeared into the darkness, and despite all our efforts, we were never able to bring him back. This story is based on the real disappearance of Patrick Alford, which occurred in Brooklyn in 2010. Despite a massive and exhaustive investigation by the NYPD, which included thousands of interviews and searches, Patrick's whereabouts remain a mystery. It is one of New York's most unsettling unsolved cases, a chilling reminder that sometimes reality is scarier than any nightmare. Story 2. On May 1st, 2010, just before dawn, the peaceful coastal community of Oak Beach, Long Island, woke up to desperate knocks on a door and the screams of a young woman. "Please help me!"
Help!
That voice
Help!
shrieked, utterly panicked. One of my neighbors, Gus, opened his door astonished and found a trembling girl on his porch, her eyes wide with terror. "Is someone chasing you? Calm down," he managed to say to her. But before he could help, the girl ran off into the darkness. Her name was Shannon Gilbert. She was 23 years old, and that was the last time anyone would see her alive. Minutes earlier, Shannon had made a terrified call to 911. "Someone's after me. Please!" she screamed into the phone, unable to give her exact location. She could also be heard pleading, "Please, get me out of here." Her words were pure desperation. That night, Shannon disappeared into the coastal marshes and thickets. When police arrived, they couldn't find her. They only found her purse, her phone, and her shoes discarded in the mud, as if she had fled from something invisible chasing her. The search for Shannon lasted months. At first, authorities believed that maybe, disoriented, she had gotten lost or drowned in the swamp. Residents of Oak Beach grew uneasy. We sensed something terrible. Patrols regularly combed the area. Not far away stretches a long strip of dunes and thickets alongside the desolate ocean parkway bordering Gilgo Beach. In December 2010, 7 months later, officers with tracking dogs searched that cold, deserted coastline, looking for any trace of Shannon. And that's when the nightmare turned into something even more sinister. The dog marked a find among the dry vegetation, but it wasn't Shannon. It was the body of another young woman wrapped in burlap. Days later, police found a second body a few meters away. Then a third and a fourth, all scattered along that same damn strip of sand. That initial search had uncovered something no one expected. A human predator had been using our quiet beaches as his secret graveyard. The discovery of 4 bodies in December 2010 shocked the community, and worse was yet to come. In the spring months of 2011, as the terrain was cleared, even more human remains were found among the bushes along the road. 10 bodies in total, or partial remains of victims, were discovered over several kilometers. Many were young women who had been missing for years, most of them sex workers. They also found the remains of a little girl and an unidentified man. The police determined that some remains had been there for years, possibly since before 2005, while others were more recent. The pattern was chilling. Multiple victims abandoned near each other all along that desolate coastal highway. A serial killer, or perhaps more than one, had been operating in the shadows, using the vast darkness of Gilgo Beach to conceal his crimes. For many years, this mystery haunted New York. The media dubbed it the Gilgo Beach murders case. Who was the monster responsible? Theories abounded. Some suspected local residents. Others believed it could have been a transient, a truck driver, even a former cop. Meanwhile, Shannon Gilbert's name remained ever present. Was she also a victim of the killer? Or was her death a separate coincidence? Officially, authorities suggested that Shannon may have accidentally drowned while fleeing, as her body was found more than a year later, not far from where she vanished. But her family always believed she was a victim, and that her panic in the 911 call proves she saw something that night. Something horrific enough to make her run for her life. I grew up in Long Island, not far from Gilgo, and knew those peaceful beaches where the only sound was the wind among the dunes. Knowing that so many bodies had been hidden beneath that sand took my breath away. Fear spread throughout the region. Nights were no longer peaceful. We imagined the killer walking among us, invisible. Young women were terrified to go out alone after dark. There was a monster loose, and years passed without catching him. Investigations moved slowly. Some victims were identified through DNA, including Melissa Barthelemy, Maureen Brainard Barnes, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello, the ones later called the Gilgo Four. But there was no trace of the killer. For over a decade, the victims' families cried out for justice, while Gilgo Beach bore the chilling fame of being the scene of one of New York's most horrifying unsolved crimes. But darkness doesn't last forever. Finally, in July 2023, when hope had almost faded, news broke that shook the nation. Police had arrested a suspect. A man named Rex Heuermann, 59 years old, an architect living in Long Island, was detained and charged with several of the murders. Authorities announced they had solid evidence linking him to at least 3 of the murdered women, and named him the prime suspect in a 4th. He was a seemingly normal man with a family who had been living among us all this time. Knowing this brought both relief and chills. The monster had always had a human face, walking unnoticed among us. Although the investigation continues, and many questions remain about other victims tied to the case, the nightmare of Gilgo Beach is finally seeing a glimpse of justice. 11 bodies in total have been linked to this macabre series since Shannon Gilbert's disappearance, marking one of New York's darkest criminal chapters. Even today, driving down Ocean Parkway, many feel a shiver when passing those lonely dunes, remembering what happened there. It's as if the wind that blows among the grasses carries the echoes of silenced voices. This case reminds us that beneath the vibrant surface of the big city, unimaginable horrors sometimes lurk, waiting in the shadows. This story is inspired by the real Gilgo Beach murders, a series of crimes that took place between 2010 and 2011, and possibly earlier, along Long Island's coast. Shannon Gilbert's disappearance led to the discovery of 11 total victims, exposing the existence of a serial killer operating in the region. After more than a decade of uncertainty, in 2023, a suspect was arrested in connection with some of the murders, shedding some light on a mystery that had kept the community terrified. The Gilgo Beach case has become one of New York's most chilling crime stories, showing that sometimes real evil can hide in plain sight among the shadows. Story 3. I used to laugh at ghost stories. I thought they were just Halloween tales. But everything changed when I started living inside one. It all began with a dream. I saw myself in my room, in my New York apartment, and next to my bed was an old green rocking chair. Sitting there was a boy with a deformed head, sunken on the right side. The boy didn't speak. He just stared at me with blank eyes. I felt a cold terror, my body paralyzed. Suddenly the little boy got up from the chair and began crawling toward my bed. I couldn't move or scream. Just as that deformed head was about to touch me, I woke up gasping. The next night I dreamed I was in a library. A little girl approached me and, whispering, asked, "You've seen dear David, haven't you?" Confused, I told her I didn't know what she was talking about. She calmly explained, "He's dead. He only appears at midnight, and you can ask him 2 questions if you first say, 'Dear David,' but never ask him a 3rd question or he will kill you." I woke up with that warning burned into my mind, but still skeptical. It was just a dream, I told myself. It wasn't long before I saw the boy in the rocking chair again in my dreams. This time I gathered the courage to speak to him. "Dear David," I said with a trembling voice, "how did you die?" The boy murmured, "In an accident, in a store." I swallowed hard and continued, "Dear David, what exactly happened?" He lowered his gaze. "A shelf fell on my head," he answered. I already felt a knot of fear in my throat, but before I could stop myself, I asked a 3rd question. "Who pushed the shelf?" Instantly, David looked up with his empty eyes and said nothing. The silence was absolute. I woke up startled, my heart pounding in my chest. I had broken the rule. I had asked 3 questions. The following days passed without incident, and I convinced myself it was all imagination. I even moved to the apartment upstairs in the same building, thinking that maybe I could leave behind any bad energy. But soon after, strange things began to happen again. Every night, right at midnight, my 2 cats would sit in front of the entrance door. They would just sit there, staring at the wood, their fur standing on end, hissing at something I couldn't see. One night I gathered my courage and looked through the peephole. I swear I saw a shadow moving on the other side. I flung the door open, but the hallway was empty. My cats just stared at me, uneasy as if waiting for it to return. I decided to buy an instant camera and also leave my cell phone recording overnight. If something was in my house, I wanted proof. Reviewing the photos, I noticed shadows and strange figures in dark corners of the living room. Once, the blurry silhouette of a child appeared standing on my chair. In another photo, half a face peeked out from the slightly open door of my bedroom. The most terrifying image showed the little boy standing on the chest, watching me sleep. Seeing that evidence froze my blood. I could no longer deny that David was real, or at least something real was with me. I also found inexplicable things around the house. One morning I found an old marble rolling down the hallway, as if someone had dropped it. Another day I discovered a child's shoe hidden in the dusty attic. An old leather shoe the size of a small child's foot. I don't have kids, nor do I know any children who had visited my home. It was as if David was leaving his belongings behind, making sure I knew he was there. It reached a point where the fear made it impossible to continue my normal life. Fleeing the nightmare, I got rid of the old rocking chair and moved to another apartment. Even in a different neighborhood, I thought that way I could escape it. For a time, things were quiet. I started sleeping better and convinced myself that dear David had been left behind. But one early morning, days after settling into the new place, I woke up startled. There was a sound in the dark, a sound I immediately recognized, which made my heart stop. It was the rhythmic creaking of a rocking chair, swinging slowly. In the dim light of the living room, I glimpsed the silhouette of a chair moving on its own, back and forth, with a sinister squeak. My eyes filled with tears of panic. I no longer owned any rocking chair. This wasn't a nightmare. It was the real story that a New York illustrator named Adam Ellis shared in real time on Twitter in 2017 in the now famous viral thread known as Dear David. His posts about the ghost child with the dented head and the photographic evidence shook millions of people, many of whom followed each update with their hearts pounding. To this day, many wonder if Adam was truly haunted by something from beyond, in one of the most terrifying paranormal digital phenomena ever documented. These aren't legends. These are real stories. They happened here in New York. On streets you may have walked, in buildings where something else might still live, something that breathes between the walls, something that watches. And if these 3 stories chilled your blood, remember this: they're not the only ones. New York holds secrets in every corner, voices in every tunnel, shadows that belong to no one. Have you lived through something like this? Has something happened to you that no one else believed, but you know it was real? Tell us your story in the comments. It could be the next one we tell on Mr. Night Terrors. And if you haven't already, subscribe, hit the bell, and tell me, from where in the world are you watching this? In the dark? Because here, what's truly terrifying is what's real.